Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Edgecam 2018 R2 Technology Overview webinar. My name is Joe Sanders, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dan Scott. Together, we look forward to highlighting useful new technology in the latest software release and explaining intended use. We appreciate your interest in the topic and carving a few minutes out of your day. Please note that phones will be muted during this presentation, with Q&A at the conclusion. Notice the GoToWebinar panel on your display. It has a chat tab, which you can use to submit questions at any time during the presentation. We anticipate the presentation will be about 40 minutes. If you're unable to stay until the end, please submit your questions using the GoToMeeting panel so that we can follow up with you later. I'd like to start off by mentioning that Edgecam 2018 R2 requires an update expiry of April 2018 or future. As part of installing the software, it is also a good idea to update your license so that you're able to use the latest software. Another quick note is that SU4 is the latest service update as of this presentation. This update is available for download from the Vero customer portal. As always, Edgecam service updates are historical, meaning they include all the previous updates, so you don't have to go and install SU1 and then 2 and so on. If your company has a corporate release policy to install software once per year, be aware that this is the version to install. Vero's guidance for customers able to only install once a year is provided in the Edgecam software update policy, which is available on the customer community forums. Search for the keyword policy to locate this information. Alternately, reach out to us and we'll be happy to send you a link. We also want to remind you of some useful information that's at your fingertips. We'll start with the What's New documentation. This is a great resource. It provides a summary list of the new functionality and changes at each new software version. What's New is available on the Edgecam launcher and also from the Help menu inside Edgecam. The Maintenance Database report is a bit more technical. This provides a summary list of all development tasks completed in this software release. The Edgecam customer community forums are a resource you should monitor regularly. We'll talk more about that at the conclusion of this presentation, but just be aware that this is a great resource to stay informed of service updates, as well as other useful information. Part of the reason we mention that is because this webinar is not going to be a rehash of every single little change in the software. We have selectively pulled the pieces of information that we feel are most relevant to the customers in this region, and also want to highlight some things that are perhaps least likely to be immediately noticed. So definitely pay attention to the What's New documentation to pick up on some things that we won't be covering today. When you go up to the File menu and choose Preferences, you have a dialog box that controls many of the behind-the-scenes behaviors in the software. There's a lot of adjustments that we can make. There are some new preferences available on the Tool Store tab that address some things that many users have suggested. We want to point those out to you. The Help button that you'll find in the lower left corner of the Preferences dialog has more explanations on these, as well as in the What's New document, but we want to highlight a couple here. There's an option now to automatically create toolkits that can be either turned on or turned off. So many customers have noticed that when we make a new sequence in the software, that the software wants to create a new toolkit, and if you don't want to do that, you need to take a moment to remove the suggested name so that a new job kit is not created as part of making the sequence. There's now a checkbox to control that at the software, so that's something that many users have asked for. We also want to point out the warning for tools with new technology, and we do suggest that that's turned on. But to take a moment to explain technology, that refers to a database function where the database is able to store the materials that you work with and the cutting tool grades and then assign relationships. That's done in the technology assistant, and it allows the software to look up speed and feed data for your program. So you choose a material, it can then go select tools based on ability to cut that material and return feed and speed calculations that are the values you want to use. It is a great way to streamline Edgecam and have it produce the program quality that you want to and ensure consistency across a programming team. So we suggest turning this option on because when you're using the software in this with this capability leveraged, you want a way to be flagged when the software is working with a tool that doesn't have lookup data. It's a great reminder that as users, for this particular tool, there's no data to look up. We need to provide the correct data for that. Sliding down a couple tabs to the Solids tab, we want to point out the Ignore Model Values option. This has actually been around in the software for a long time. We'll explain what it does in a moment, but this has been expanded to now support colors loaded from Edgecam Designer and from Visi, which are other Vero software products. The Ignore Model Values checkbox can be turned on for situations where the CAM user wants the coloring of the solid model to be controlled within Edgecam. So with that done, you can head to the Features tab, you can edit the solid, you can change it to whatever color you wish it to be. But we have many customers that have adopted a workflow where in the CAD software, faces on a solid could be assigned colors that represent something key in the manufacturing process, or perhaps in a multi-body solid or assembly, different parts that have different purposes are flagged with unique colors, such as fixtures or stock, for example. When this checkbox is turned on, the colors from the CAD system are respected and loaded through into Edgecam. This can be, again, real helpful to the process. So for users with Visi and Designer, those are now loaded in as well. We'd suggest just taking a quick look through the help system if you're looking for Ignore Model Values and what CAD systems that supports and what options in those CAD systems can work with. This is a really useful technology for some customers. And then sliding down to the Interface tab, there's a new preference to use the Vero mouse controls. We have some users that may have other Vero products such as WorkNC, and we've all been in situations where you have different software packages you use regularly that have slightly different mouse controls, and this option is great for helping ensure a standard mouse operation across different Vero software products. Again, the dialog level help and what's new provides more information on this. And even if you don't have other Vero software products at this point in time, there are some interesting mouse controls that you may like, so definitely check this one out. There's also some new preferences in Simulator that we want to make sure you're aware of. Many of you are used to, as part of the building tool path process, using the Simulate button to simulate the machining. Simulator will open up. If you have graphics added to your post-processor of the machine, you'll see the whole machine setup and how the machine moves and be able to have good visibility of that. If you right-click out in the interface where you see the CNC machine and part assembly shown in this graphic, you'll have an options selection in the right-click shortcut menu. So if you go into options, you'll be able to then move into the display tab, and there's two new preferences here: to simplify STL holders and to simplify solid milling cutters. We would probably suggest that users should just turn both of these on, and they'll benefit users that may have solid models that were used to develop graphics that may have a lot of complexity, and you get some performance benefits from that. Replace active tool is also another good one that's just below those two. And the What's New document does a good job of showing this, but to put simply, if you have a situation where multiple tools in a turret have the same turret position, and there could be some valid reasons for doing that, or perhaps it was just an accidental mistake as part of the buildup in the CAM process, the software will only show the current tool during simulation. So again, some nice options and preferences for simulator that we want to make sure you know how to use. Probably one of the highlights of this version, at least in my opinion, are the new wireframe mill features. So if you consider the part that we have shown here on the side, it's a fairly simple rectangular part with a couple of cross slots intersected by a hole. If you think about what Feature Finder, the automatic feature recognition, is going to come up with, it's going to create an open mill feature and 4 different bosses for that region. Well, the bosses probably don't represent what we're really looking to machine, and so we might toss those out and stay with the open mill feature. But the toolpath will machine that entire area. And there are certainly situations where that's fine, but there's other times where we'd prefer to just be able to focus in on the area here and deal with that as one cut, and then the other area as a separate cut. In these situations in the past, we've often not been able to get the feature we wanted to and resort to extracting wireframe geometry, and that's fine, we can create toolpath, but many users have said, hey, it'd be great to be able to quickly get a feature there. How can we do that when the shape has interruptions? Well, we have this wireframe mill feature capability that can do that now, and the result is exactly what you see here, a closed pocket for the circular component within that solid. When you open Edgecam 2018 R2 and go over to the Features tab, there's a new command called Wireframe Mill Feature, and there's a drop-down list shown by the little down triangle, and underneath it, ability to edit those features as well. Dan has a really helpful demonstration that gives some ideas on how this can be used, and he'll go into depth in this. But I want to, at this point, just give you some ideas. So thinking about that Features tab, your prismatic mill workflow at Edgecam 2018 R2 can change somewhat. So we would recommend that you start when you bring in a solid and you got prismatic mill work to begin with running Find Features, the automatic feature recognition tool. This will likely result in many of the features that you need for the manufacturing process, and as usual, if there's some that you don't need, you can throw those out. If there's additional features that you feel you need, the manual mill feature commands are very helpful at adding in those additional items. If you still don't have quite all you need, then the wireframe mill feature may now provide some ways to quickly go get those as well. Why would we do this? Well, it's because when we work with a solid mill feature, we can leverage Edgecam's ability to quickly build toolpath, to maintain a relationship with the geometry, and as end users have to fill in less information to the software. We can also leverage knowledge-based machining routines that we've used to improve the software performance and ensure standard process, such as the strategy manager. Now we still have the extract geometry command at the far end of the toolbar, so in the past we would have had to start with Feature Finder, then probably suggest continuing on to manual mill features if needed, and as a final resort extracting the wireframe sketch geometry, which can be further modified. We can still create toolpath, but we lose the relationship to the solid. Well, now what we've got is the wireframe mill feature, so now extract geometry should be your 4th choice. We do want to point out that the wireframe mill feature is often based on extracted geometry from the solid in our experience. Obviously you can sketch your own, but it's often easier to just extract geometry from the solid and then create a wireframe mill feature from that. Dan's going to demonstrate how to do that. So in our opinion, those will probably often be used as a pair. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Dan now to demonstrate this functionality.
Thanks, Joe. So let's go ahead and look at that new wireframe mill feature. Okay, so I have a part here, and if I look at it, kind of have a tapered inside contoured wall. I got some fillets on the inside and the outer side. Okay, now if we were to rough that out traditionally, basically we come up here to roughing, and we'll go ahead, and what I'm going to do is select the solid because we really don't have a decent feature here to machine. And then what I'll do is contain it within a boundary, okay? So we'll select the outside. Okay? And you can see we'll go ahead and it does machine that, but we also get it kind of coming out outside these voids here, okay? There's really no good way to prevent that, because if our boundary was smaller, we wouldn't hit the outer taper on the top of that part. Another thing is the cycle time. So if you look here, I get 17 minutes, 31 seconds, okay? So what I want to do is create a feature, because I want that toolpath just to make a nice continuous going around in a concentric type fashion. So I'm going to go ahead to the Features tab, and I want to do is extract an edge here, and I want to extract the top part of that radius, okay? Now let's go ahead and look at just that layer, so we'll just show only that. Now what I want to do is make that a complete circle. So we'll say 0 to 360, and we'll set that radius back to 1.25 inches. And we'll turn everything back on here. So we'll show all. And now what I can do is make a wireframe feature based on that circle. So we'll come up here. We can give it a name. The level here will just say 0, and I know the depth is -2 inches. Okay, we get an upper radius of 1/8 of an inch, and we also have a fillet on the bottom of that pocket. And we have a draft in that wall of 6 degrees. Okay, so the XY profile is going to be the top of that circle. Now what you can see, what that did is created a feature to match that profile. Okay, so we'll go ahead and accept that. Now if I go back to the machining, and basically I want to do is reselect my geometry here. So again, if I hover over, we get a cycle time of that 17 minutes, 31 seconds. And basically all I'm going to do is reselect my picks. And instead of picking the solid, I'm going to go ahead and pick the feature that I created with no containment boundary. And here you can see I get a nice continuous path. And if I hover over this, you can drop that down by 4 minutes almost. So again, if we go, let's go ahead and simulate that. And let's slow that down. So you can see here we're dropping down every 1/2 inch, and then we're coming back with the intermediate slices in a continuous type toolpath. And there's some other things we can do with this too. You can see we have the edge of that circle that I created. I'm going to go ahead and modify that, and let's just say we get a 1.5. That's going to go ahead and increase that edge. Now, underneath the wireframe mill feature, we have the ability to regenerate that. So we got that associativity to that wireframe. Okay, so I'll go ahead and select that feature, and you can see that's going to go ahead and readjust. And same thing with the toolpath as well. So if we come back here to machining, and we'll just do a regen, that toolpath is now adjusted to that feature. So back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Dan. That's great to see how the command works, and the wireframe mill feature is definitely a useful new addition to the software. There's also some additions on the turning side, and I'm going to summarize them. Dan's going to demonstrate a variety of things here in terms of how some of this stuff works. We just want to get you thinking about this first. So starting with the rough turning cycle, at Edgecam 2018 R2, it now has ability to collision check on tailstocks. Many of you may be aware that the ability to collision check on chucks, both main spindle and sub spindle, was added at the previous software version. Dan's going to explain how those work. Real useful stuff. The software also has a lead radius added to this cycle, and this allows the tool to now roll into rough turn cuts. This is useful in certain materials certain machining applications, and also in prime turning. On the thread turning cycle, this has been improved to now be able to work with any category of the turn tool types. That could be turning tools, boring tools, groove tools, as well as threading tools. Previous versions of software permitted the thread turning cycle to be used only with thread turn tools, so this is helpful to many users. Some improvements to feature find, you'll notice that in the feature find command, the automatic feature recognition, that there's now a back features only checkbox. Users that have main and sub spindles often find it very helpful to be able to have features for the main spindle and features for the sub spindle, and there was an option added several versions back to find front turn features only. That's useful both to users with a single spindle, single turret type machining center, but also to users with a twin spindle machine that prefer for a particular setup to only work on the main spindle. It just reduces the number of features that the software finds. Well, now there's an option to find back features only. It can be helpful for users that want to work only on the sub spindle for a particular machining setup, as well as for perhaps part flip scenarios and other places where we just want to work on the back of the part. Also in the tool store database, some useful new options here. So when you edit a turn tool, you'll find a new checkbox for constant surface speed option on your turning category tools. We suggest that you take tools that you would tend to always run in constant surface speed, or perhaps most of the time, and turn on the switch. And what it does is it ensures that when any user goes and selects this tool from Tool Store, that inside Edgecam, in the tool dialog, over on the spindle page, the CSS option will already be checked. So that's real helpful. And on groove tools, there's a new minimum and maximum diameter fields that have been added for tools that might be used in a face groove situation. This is helpful both for users just browsing tools in the database and trying to remember what their diameter range is, but also for automation tools such as Strategy Manager so that it chooses the right tool for any given application. A few things to point out on the mill side. The roughing cycle now has ability to automatically generate pre-drill positions. This is a really big deal and will help immensely for users that do have pre-drill applications. With the waveform technology that many of you are familiar with, we don't rely on pre-drill locations as much as we might have, let's say, a decade ago. But there are applications where pre-drill still is used, and in those applications it has always been difficult to figure out where the plunge points are going to be and then go add the drilling in. Dan's going to demonstrate this technology, and it allows the software to automatically figure out where the pre-drill positions will be. The geometry that we'll need to do pre-drilling is created as part of the roughing cycle, and it is obviously associated with the tool path, so this really speeds up the process of pre-drilling. The profiling cycle has some improvements that will be fairly popular with users. The multi-pass technology, the development team's been doing a lot of work in that over the last several releases, and it really expands the usability of profiling to the point where it's not just a finishing cycle. Well, with multiple passes, users were finding that if they wanted to go use the helical option over on the depth tab, that it was grayed out. That was intentional, but at this release, the development team has done work to allow the helical option to be available with multiple paths, and the requirement is that the walls that you're machining should be vertical. Also, there's a performance improvement when we're using the profiling cycle with pick solid faces. The software is just going to run faster now. The reasoning behind there is that in prior versions, even though we've isolated and picked individual faces to machine, the software was still considering the entire solid to make sure that the tool path doesn't gouge any adjacent surfaces. The development team has found a way to ensure that gouge-free behavior, but to only consider the tool path building in the faces that are provided. So this can simplify and speed up the processing quite a bit with still maintaining good results. 3D milling is now permissible in rotary mode, and this is a big deal. My opinion is this may be the biggest software technology improvement at this version. I want to give some background to help you understand where this is used. So if you consider a CNC machine where there's limits to the linear axis travel, but the machine has a rotary axis that can rotate to present the part to the work zone where the tool can operate. We do see this on some milling machines, but it's actually more common on turning centers. So if you consider your standard turning center that has turret-based live tooling, C-axis, and well, let's say it also has a Y-axis. The Y-axis has a limit of travel, usually about plus or minus 2 inches on a modern machine, and the X-axis also has a limit of travel. If I have a face-mounted tool, the tool can operate past the center line for only a short distance. It really has to stay mostly on X positive. So if we have a larger workpiece, we need to constantly move the rotary axis to keep the part in the zone where the tool can work. We use rotary mode in Edgecam to do that, and that outputs code that works with the polar interpolation functions of the machines, such as G12.1 in the FANUC world, and enables us to adequately drive the part. But in past versions of Edgecam, when we go into rotary mode, we lose access to the 3D contour mill cycles, such as parallel lace, constant cusp finishing, rest profiling. And so as a result, there are ways to get tool path done, but it requires a little bit of creativity on the user part. Well, now, without having to do anything extra in the software, we can take those same applications, switch on rotary mode, and get to any of the 3D contour mill cycles. So another way to consider it is that for rotary mode, we've basically gained 9 new milling cycles that are available to us for those applications. Dan's going to demonstrate how this works. Again, really big deal and really helpful to customers with these types of applications. There's also some nice improvements to thread milling that further expand user control over results and address some suggestions that users have had for further refining that cycle. As we head over to mentioning some stuff in WiredEM, I want to start by just reminding anyone who may not be aware that when we talk about WiredEM, we're talking about the modern Edgecam wire system. Users that have perhaps used Edgecam maybe a decade or so ago and explored the wire product probably found that it's functional, but when it comes to multi-pass control, looking up technology, multiple support tags, and other common applications, it just didn't have that capability. And Vero software has implemented a much better system as the wire engine in the modern software. So PEPS Wire is that engine, and PEPS is an excellent wire product that has all of the technology that Edgecam users were asking for many years ago available in it. So when we talk about the wire technology, we're talking about the PEPS wire technology that's now part of Edgecam's modern software. One of the great things about PEPS is that the wire technologies for many manufacturers are already included in the software. So this dictates the power settings, a number of passes, and things like that. And the software database has that information. Obviously, as users, we can further add more information to it. We can customize it. But the point is the software already comes stocked with that data. There's some new wire technologies added for machines from the manufacturers that we've listed here. Also, another really useful thing is that Simulator now displays the start holes for WiredEM applications. So we can see exactly where the start hole is, where the upper and lower guides will be threading the wire from. Right, we're going to turn it over to Dan to demonstrate many of these functions for us.
Thanks, Joe. A lot of good stuff there as well. So first, let's go ahead and we're going to look at the rough turn cycle. There's a couple enhancements there. If you can see, I got this rough turn. Let's go ahead and simulate that. You can see that tool is going to come right into the chuck. Okay, so we'll stop that. Now, we had this in the last version. So if we go into that rough turn, and what we'll do is go into our advanced options, I can collision detect against that main spindle. Okay, I can also collision check on the sub, and now in this version we also have the tailstock. Okay, so if I turn that on, you can see we're going to go ahead and that's going to automatically cut back that tool path. Another nice enhancement is, let's look in that roughing, is we have the ability to lead on and lead off of the part. So we could put in different lead radiuses on the lead out and lead up, or we can specify them as same as the depth of the cut. So we'll go ahead and select that. And that's going to go ahead and lead on and off of that part. So again, we'll simulate that. Slow that one down a little bit. And you can see we can adjust that. Okay, so you might want to do this maybe if you get harder materials, or maybe you want to use different techniques as far as the turning. So the options are there. And then the last thing on this part is we now have the option to use custom tools or different tools to do threading. Okay, before it was more specific based on the tool if we're to go ahead and do a turn for the thread. So down here I got a tool, and we'll just go ahead and look at the simulation here. And we'll jump down to that tool, and let's go ahead and play that. So you can see I'm coming in with a custom tool that I had created, and we're actually turning that thread there. So again, another nice enhancement there. Next, what we'll go ahead and look at is the roughing cycle. So the roughing cycle in the milling environment has also got some enhancements. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is we have a standard roughing out, 4 pockets there. We're kind of helicling in, and then we're removing that material based on a waveform technology. Okay, if for some reason we wanted to pre-drill these and then drop in and then remove that material, we now have that option. We had it before, but we'd have to create points and then go ahead and put a cycle on each one of those points. But now, within the roughing cycle, we have the ability, in the approach type, we're going to pick the pre-drill, but now we have generate the pre-drill lines. Okay, so what this will do is generate lines that we can actually apply the drill cycle to. So we'll go ahead and generate that. And now you can see it readjusted that tool path. So we're plunging straight in, and then we're waveforming the material out. The only thing we now have to do is add the drill cycle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll go up to the whole cycle. And we'll go to the depth tab, and under the options, if you guys all remember, we've had this for a while, but we got multi-level, and we also have multiple depths. Okay, I want to make sure both of those are selected. And then I'm going to go ahead and filter by the vertical lines here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and window around those 4 drill lines, and we'll just move this up to right before that cutter. And now, if I go ahead and simulate that, we'll shut off the machine simulation, and let's see what we have here. We're drilling, we're coming in, and now we're waveforming that out. So just like that, we didn't have to create any points, or generate it automatically. And the nice thing is that cycle actually created those. So it's become associative to that cycle. So if I come back into that roughing, and let's just change that Z offset, maybe we only want to leave 1/8 of an inch of material there, and we'll go ahead and hit OK. So what we'll see here is go ahead and regen, and we're going to get this message saying, hey, it's associative, and we're going to go ahead and readjust those drill points. So now when that regens, we'll take a look at it, and you can see that now we're leaving 1/8 of an inch, and we're drilling to that same level as well. Okay, So again, we'll go ahead and run that simulation. And let's play that. So now we're staying up 1/8 of an inch in all those pockets there. So next, what I want to look at, let's look at that 3D milling on the rotary mode. So we have this part, guys, in a CY type configuration lathe, okay? And what I want to do is be able to surface machine this profile, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rough it out, and we could have done this before using the rotary mode. We'll just go ahead to a roughing cycle, and let's just make sure we're cut increment, that's fine, and we'll put some intermediate cuts in here, say every 60th thou. And we'll go ahead and rough that. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at the simulation here. Okay. So again, we're able to do this. What we weren't able to do is actually 3D finish that. So let's look at that. So we'll go ahead and grab another tool, and I'm going to grab a ball nose, and we'll select that one. Now you'll see underneath the milling cycles, we have the option to do several more items in rotary mode. Okay. Again, this applies to milling as well in rotary. We'll just do a parallel lace, and we'll go ahead and that's fine. And we'll go ahead and apply that to, say, these faces here. And you can see we get that nice 3D lace. And let's go ahead and simulate that there. So right where we left off, we'll go ahead and play that. And now you can see we're actually utilizing the rotary to finish that. We'll go ahead and speed that up a little bit. So again, very nice enhancement. And again, it can be used in the milling side as well. Okay. Then the last thing what we'll do is we'll go ahead and look at some thread milling enhancements. The thread mill cycle also got some enhancements. So right now, if I go ahead and simulate that, we're basically going to single point all the way up on a single pass there, okay? And then it's going to go ahead and do the other one. Now, what we now have the option to do is in that cycle, we look at our thread tab, we can now add different cut increments as far as coming in. So maybe I want to come in every 0.01. Maybe I want 2 spring cuts. You know, maybe the spring depth, we'll say 5 thou, and then we'll hit OK. What that's going to do is go ahead and regen, and you can clearly see now we got multiple passes going in there. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So again, we're going to go single pass, then we'll come back, and we'll keep feeding in there for those specifications. So again, that's pretty nice. And then the last thing is the profile. So say I got, you know, maybe a casting here and it varies. So I want to be able to put multiple passes on there. And we've done that in the last couple of releases. But now what I can do is if I go ahead and add, let's say maybe 3/8 passes here. We now have the option to be able to use the helical. Before, this was disabled with the multiple passes. So again, another great enhancement as well. So we'll go back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Dan. That's really good stuff. I appreciate how you took the time to touch on some things that have been added to the software over several recent versions and showing how this can all tie in together and be used in Edgecam 2018 R2. As we move toward wrap up, there are some software technologies that customers have been acquiring about recently. We want to give a very brief overview of a few important items and then move on to answer questions. Edgecam Inspect is a newly available software tool which enables probe path generation within CAM alongside the tool path generation. Edgecam Inspect combines the industry-leading metrology expertise from Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence and the manufacturing expertise from Vero Software. Now, some of that language is pulled from a press release. What does it really mean? Some of you may have seen that, wondered what does it mean? That's a question we're getting a lot lately. Put simply, Edgecam Inspect expands the ability to act on quality data at key points within the manufacturing process. So several years back, industry discussions about touch probes in CNC machines usually revolved around simplifying setups and updating work offsets. Today, the discussion is about how touch probes can be used in the CNC machine to ensure a reliable process and a high-quality part. This is now possible with Edgecam Inspect. As many of you know, Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence acquired Vero Software in 2014, and this latest product is a great example of the collaboration between the metrology and manufacturing experts in both companies. More importantly, Edgecam customers have access to both the Hexagon metrology expertise and the Vero software manufacturing experts. We're under one roof. For more information on Edgecam Inspect, we encourage you to reach out to your Vero account manager and learn more at the product website. For those planning to be at IMTS, please stop by the Vero booth and talk with us about your company's applications. We'll be happy to demonstrate and show you how this works. The next area we'd like to explain is Tombstone Manager. This module allows the assembly of unique completed CAM parts into a single CAM file. Think of it as an assembly, for purposes of quickly creating an efficient production run. Tombstone Manager is developed to simplify the complex CAM process of setups with multiple parts. We're finding that some customers using the insert component and then merge sequence and then rationalize commands to build a software workflow for their multi-part setups have not considered the Tombstone Manager. It's a very efficient software option. We'd like to encourage you to think about multi-part machining when you see information about Tombstone Manager. The Tombstone Manager is not reserved only for horizontal machining centers that might be equipped with, let's say, a 24-station Tombstone fixture. So if your CAM use involves creating toolpath for multiple parts, and you realize that producing reliable edit-free CNC code eats up a significant amount of your time, please talk to us about this software option. Regardless of whether your multi-part machining application is 3, 4, or 5-axis milling machines, it shouldn't be extremely difficult to program in Edgecam. The final thing I'd like to mention is Edgecam Designer. This is a new CAD software product from Vero. Edgecam Designer is a solution to the design for manufacturing challenge that we frequently encounter in the CAM process. We encourage you to visit the product website for more information on this tool. All right, and before heading to Q&A, we want to remind everyone about the many ways you can stay informed on the latest Edgecam software news and discuss your application requirements. Great way to touch base with us is to reach out to your Vero account manager. If you can keep us informed of the challenges your company is working with, we can help make sure you know about possible solutions. The Edgecam website and customer community forums are also great places for information. We've added a screen image showing how you can go to your account on the Vero customer portal, and from under the community tab, you can then open and get into the customer community forums. This is a great place to connect with other software users and application experts. We encourage you to consider subscribing to the customer community forums where you'll receive email updates at whatever interval you want, daily, weekly, monthly, about new content. This is a great way to stay informed of service updates, by the way. Also, keep in mind the What's New documentation as well as the help system. They're excellent references. They're available directly from the Edgecam launcher and within the Edgecam software, whether you have internet access or not. And for those attending IMTS, make plans to stop by the Vero software booth and talk with us about your company's applications. Okay, let's open it up to your questions. Just a reminder, the GoToWebinar control panel on your display has a chat area where you can submit questions.